Hi, everyone. This is Lisa and Carrie from the Things We Know podcast, and we are so honored today to have our guest, Lorena Reynolds, on with us to talk a little bit more. She is a lawyer. We want to talk from a law perspective, a legal perspective about what the SAVE Act is going to do. So let me just tell you a little bit about Lorena. She is the managing attorney of the Reynolds Law Firm in Corvallis, Oregon, where she focuses her practice on family law and issues of social justice. For more than 20 years, she's been litigating high conflict cases with an emphasis on representing survivors of domestic and sexual violence. She also teaches classes about intimate violence at Oregon State University and is a frequent public speaker on a variety of topics. Since 2004, Lorena and her firm have provided over $2 million worth of pro bono legal services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence, stalking, and child abuse to help children who are being negatively impacted by the drug or alcohol abuse of a parent and in pursuit of social justice for marginalized communities. Thank you, Lorena, so much for jumping on with us today.
Thanks for having me.
I really am grateful that you're doing that work. Thank you so much. I have so many questions, but we want to be really respectful of your time because of the work you do. I'm going to let you get back to it. Could you tell us? I mean, obviously, you're working with and protecting and representing marginalized groups like women, married women, women who are victims of abuse, and children, and families who obviously need your help. Why should people be concerned about this Voter SAVE Act?
Yeah, there's so much to be worried about right now, right? There's so many issues of social justice and environmental impacts. And there's so much going on right now. It's hard to make everything a priority, right? But the SAVE Act is really about, as a community, do we want to enfranchise people? Do we want people to be to go out and vote and feel like their vote counts and feel like that's something that they can contribute to? Or do we want to disenfranchise people and make it harder and discourage people from being involved in the political process, right? So that's really what this is about, is fundamentally who is going to be able to go to the polls and who isn't. And I'm out here in Oregon where we have spent decades trying to get folks to the polls in ways that that you don't have to take time off work, right? For a lot of people, going to vote, it means you have to miss work. You have to drive somewhere. You have to find childcare. In Oregon, we have vote by mail. We have registration. We have motor voter registration, so that when you go to get your ID, your Oregon State ID or your driver's license, pretty much no matter, anytime you're interacting with the DMV, they're asking, are you registered to vote? Can we get you registered? So here we just have a community value where we want people to show up to vote. And the SAVE Act is all about putting barriers in place to make that more difficult, more expensive, and to attack all of these steps that places like Oregon and across the country who want to enfranchise people. It's really about taking away those gains.
And Carrie made an interesting point before we started recording. And this thought has crossed my mind too. I'm already registered to vote. Why does this affect me? Again, I'm in LA, and so we also have mail-in voting. It's very easy here. I just did something for my daughter. I was like, do you want to register to vote? Oh, taxes. Do you want to register? So easy. We wouldn't be able to do that anymore.
So this is a lot like the Real ID, right? They kept saying like, okay, you have a long time to get this done and we're going to get everybody to do this. When you start to dig into the actual guts of this bill, you're going to see that a lot of these regulations are yet to come. And it looks like one of the things that they're going to do is to, over time, go back and purge their roles and make everybody update their voter registration over time. So even if you have your voter registration now, just like you have your driver's license now, at some point in time, they may very well require you to register again. So it's going to impact you then, but it's also going to impact anybody whose documents have a name change anywhere along the line. And so that's really where this issue has become particularly important to me, because for trans folks that have complex documents of their ID, this is going to be so much more of a barrier than it is for any other population.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie has, I can go back and change my name back to my maiden name if I so choose. But someone who has transitioned, their birth certificate is never going to match a passport, a driver's license, and so they are absolutely kept from voting or
Well,
registering.
one of the real problems that we're seeing right now is that, we've spent decades, particularly here in Oregon, helping folks get IDs that match, right? So that your birth certificate, your driver's license, your passport, your social security number, your Oregon health plan card, your school ID, that all of your IDs are the same and that they reflect your gender identity, right? So you show your ID and it's going to be an accurate reflection of who you are and what your name is. And what we're seeing now, particularly in the area of passports and visas, we're seeing the federal government start to take that away and say, even if your state documents, and the states are really where we have normally seen ID, name change, those types of things, those have been state controlled, right? And so now the federal government is coming in and saying, we are no longer going to recognize your state issued name or your state issued gender marker. And by doing that, we're putting folks in a position where they're going to have even a worse mismatch of documents. So you're going to have federal documents that say one thing, and you're going to have state documents that say something else. And it's even more complicated for folks that don't live in the state where they were born, because we're seeing these rollbacks in many states that are saying we're not going to update your birth certificate. So you'll have a birth certificate from one state that still has your gender assigned at birth, and then you'll have your ID in another state where you're legally recognized as having a different gender, and then you will have your passport, which might have yet another option, right? So it's very complicated, and we're just adding more and more layers of complexity, which what's the result of that? The result of that is to further marginalize trans folks, which you can see in all of the legislation that's coming down and all of the rhetoric, whether it's in the military or the Voter Act or the passports or the visas and all these different areas. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing that attack on folks that, at least in Oregon and in California, we really embrace our trans family members and our community members. Like, that's something that's important to us, and we've worked really hard as community members who have voted for people to come into office to make sure that those folks are protected.
Yeah. I mean,
so you said, I mean, there's so much you just said that I'm, trying to stay calm. When you said it's looking like they're going to purge, I don't think everyone's aware of that. Like, I think that that's one of the most important things I want people to hear, no matter which of these groups they care about. Hopefully everyone cares about everyone, but the purging piece, I think is obviously missing if people aren't doing a deep dive, because as I was saying before, so many, I live in Oregon, and everybody, they obviously care about voting for not just themselves, but other people. But I've had so many people come back and be like, my husband looked at it and he said, we shouldn't worry. Like, okay, who shouldn't worry? Because if they're going to purge it, then everyone who's had a name change who doesn't match or has any sort of, like you said, any complicated documentation, which people do for various reasons, they're going to be purged.
Well, and of course, they're making a situation in which the easiest ID to use is going to be your passport, which of course is the most expensive one. It's the one that's controlled by the federal government, and it's the one that takes the longest to acquire.
And probably taking longer now.
It has even be like 2 or 3 years ago, I could not believe the wait. Like, I had my niece and my son for different trips. They had to take. My niece couldn't make her trip, and my son, we had to do like an emergency trip up to Seattle to get his, because his was taking so long. Again, you're right. That like, if we didn't have the resources to do that, that couldn't have happened. And that wasn't for voting, but it was for an important school trip. So I already know that the passport system is messed up.
Yeah, I think the purging thing is huge, because essentially what that says is any one of us at any time, if they purge the records and say, let's start clean, every single person has to now go through and re-register. If you have changed your name for any reason, this will be an issue. That piece and the piece where you said this is only the beginning, those two pieces sent my blood pressure through the roof. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
the other thing is that the other thing about this particular issue is that it's another unfunded mandate, right? Like you think about when was the last time that you went down to your county voter's office, right? Do you even know where that is? How many people are working there? I know that in our local office, it's not very many people. And can you imagine if they decide, okay, you have to review even 5% of your voters every year to make sure that those folks comply with having provided a citizenship updated documents. Who's going to do that, and how long is that going to take, and at what cost, and what other services aren't going to get provided? I had a situation with a youngster that I know that has an unusual signature, and their registration for voting kept getting rejected. Their ballot kept getting rejected because the signature didn't match. And that doesn't sound like a big deal. You can go down to the office in Benton County and go and prove your signature, which he did twice, but he's off at college. And so what do you do at that point? Right? Like he can't just come home during election season to solve that problem. He comes home Christmas break, he solves it, tries to solve it because his ballot got rejected for the November election, but then you don't know that it's going to get rejected again until the next election. So it's another barrier to somebody getting to vote. And lots and lots of kids are off at college, but they're still voting in their home state where they're a resident, where they're most committed to their community, right?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is this is absolutely voter repression. Like this is not about safeguarding us in any way, shape, or form. It's about disenfranchising as many people as possible so that they can win more elections. And because the statistics show women vote more likely for Democrats, and that's what they are trying to knock off.
Suppress. Yeah, it's voter suppression for sure.
Yeah.
Well, they're for sure starting with the most vulnerable population, which is our trans and non-binary community members. That's where they're starting, and they think the rest of us aren't going to stand up and do something about that. And because there is so much transphobia in our communities, they think that we're not going to stand up at this point for the folks that need to be stood up. We need to stand with trans folks and say, we're not going to stand for this. Doesn't matter if we're cis or not.
Absolutely.
Right. Because it's the first of many groups. And if you don't stand up for them first, they're just going to keep going down the line.
So let's talk again. And I say again because we did this in our other video too, but in case you didn't see the other one, we still have time. The House voted to pass it with the help of 4 Democrats, and I'd like to say who they are again. Jared Golden of Maine, Henry Culler of Texas, Ed Case of Hawaii, and most disappointingly, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez out of Washington. The Senate has not yet voted for this. They need 6 Dems to cross over. So no matter whether you live in a state that is red or blue, call your senators and let them know you do not want them to vote for this or thank you for not voting for this. They have to pay attention. They take numbers of everybody that is emailed, who has called, who has left voicemails, and it is this simple. You just say, I am a constituent and I'm urging you to vote no on the SAVE Act. It creates barriers to voting, especially for women who have changed their names, transgendered people, you name it. The bill is unnecessary, harmful, and based on a false narrative. We will put a tool in the comments of this so that you have an easy way of finding your senators. I beg of you, call them on as soon as you see this, send them an email, make your voice heard because we are this close to losing it. Carrie, anything you'd like to say to wrap up, or Lorena?
I would just love to thank Lorena for your time. I really appreciate the work you're doing as a fellow Oregonian. I'm actually not from here. I say a fellow Oregonian. I'm a citizen here now I've lived here about 28 years. I'm originally from California, but the one thing I'm so impressed living here is the ease. Like when I went to go change my name, the ease and the welcome, and then all the ways that they're trying to remove barriers for people who can't afford it. Like when I went to do it, I was asking them about that. I said, this is a hassle, and I made time to do it. And they said, honestly, if you had told us you had a hardship, we have ways to waive that. And so I just am really grateful that people like you keep fighting for everybody's access, that you're fighting for our trans brothers and sisters, that you're fighting for women who are getting out of abusive situations and families and everyone's rights to vote. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for caring about this important issue.
Thanks so much, Lena. And I hope we can have you back for a full episode at some point, because I feel like we have lots of things we can talk to you about. Thanks, everyone. Please share this with every single person you know, and please do your part and call your senators now. Thank you.